Hello everyone, my name is Randy with My Design Group. In this session I'm going to walk you through some of the functions available within the 4TaxClinics application for a user with the role of coordinator. The coordinator can create and edit clinics that they are responsible for, and when they do create them they can define the catchment area and also set the first date of the year that the clinic is open and the last day of the year when the clinic is open. And when I say clinic, that's referring more to a physical location where volunteers come and work with clients who have booked an appointment to prepare their tax return and submit that to the CRA. Once the clinic has been set up in the system, the coordinator can now create additional users and set them to any one of the following roles. Coordinator, someone doing the bookings for their clinic, someone doing the tax returns and preparing those tax returns, and also an analyst. In addition to those items, the coordinator can also view the appointments with the clients in a schedule format or calendar format. They can also view and edit the schedule for the tax returners. So a tax returner can also go into the application. I'll cover that in a separate video. And that tax returner can define when they are volunteering within the operating times and dates for the clinic. But the coordinator can also adjust those as well if the tax returner chooses to do so. The coordinator can also view appointments in a list report and also view the returns submitted in a list report. So now I'll move over to the 4TaxClinics application. So you can see here that this user has been configured as a coordinator, and they have responsibility for 4 clinics as defined in their profile here. At the bottom of the profile, we also have the ability for you to watch videos like this simply by clicking on the link, and more will be added as time goes on. You can also edit your profile by clicking the edit button, and some of the information you are permitted to adjust. One of them being the home page listed here at the bottom. And what this does is allow you to define your landing page or your home page once you log in. So this is presently set up for the return list. So when I log out and then re-log in, it's going to take me right to this home page. And so you could choose to have any one of the screens configured as your home URL. So the next thing we're going to do is create a clinic. If you click on Admin Clinics, you can see the existing clinics are listed here along with a map displaying the present catchment area for each of these clinics. Let's now click on New Clinic at the top right. And now a map comes up with fields down below where you can enter the appropriate information for that clinic. The first thing I recommend is defining the catchment area, and you can move the mouse around and scroll in or out to the appropriate zoom level. And once you've placed the map in the proper area, simply click your mouse with a single click and drag it over, do another click, and keep doing that until you've defined the catchment area, going around until the area is closed. And now you see the color changes And if you need to make any tweaks to any one of the lines, simply drag it over to the appropriate area, and you have now defined the catchment area. At this point, you could now type in the appropriate information defining in this case, the name of the clinic, and select the organization that it's a part of, postal code. This is case sensitive, so make sure you put in an uppercase for the letters. The address, city, province, phone number, any appropriate extension. Now you want to set the operating start date, which is the first day of the year that the clinic will be open. And we'll say that March 1st is when we're going to start offering times for the clinic to be open and accept clients to come in. And let's say we'll run this clinic until the end of April. So that's the operating start date and end date. We've defaulted the appointment length to 30 minutes as per the specification. The next setting is to set whether this clinic will only accept clients that live within the catchment area. So as clients now call in, provide their address, the system will determine whether they're in or outside the catchment area. If they are not in the catchment area and this is set, then they could not book an appointment with this clinic. If you don't care where they live, then you can keep this unset. Type of clinic, whether they're drop-in or appointment or both, and accessibility offerings. And then a maximum number of volunteers that would operate at any one time during your operating days. So if you have 3 stations with 3 computers, and then you would typically put in 3 volunteers here, indicating that the maximum number of appointments at any one time would be 3. And with the appointment length being 30 minutes, you could now process 6 returns per hour. I won't hit submit at this point since some of the information here is just fictitious. But if you did hit submit, the record would now be created and that clinic would now show up in your list. And once that clinic is created, you can go back in at any time and click Edit. Make adjustments to the catchment area if desired, and any changes to the fields that are open here, such as the operating start date and end date. Now that we have the clinic's first date of operating and the final date of operating set, we now need to establish the operating times within a typical week. To do that, simply hit the Edit Weekly Schedule. You now pull up a week view, Sunday to Saturday. You can ignore the actual dates here, that they are not relevant at this particular setting. And scroll down to the appropriate times where the clinic now be operating. So for example, if we're going to be operating on Monday from 9 till noon, you can click on the cell, and after the segment turns yellow, drag the bottom of that segment to the end time. So now we've established 9 to 12 on Monday, and let's set from 1 till 5 on Tuesday, 9 to 1 on Wednesday. Let's say Thursday we will not have the clinic open, and Friday set from 9 till 4. So this now defines the operating hours of the clinic for a typical week. With the typical weekly schedule set, we now may want to block out certain days or times where the clinic will not be open on a typical week, for example, on a holiday. So to block out those specific times, click the Edit Blockout Schedule. And now let's scroll over to a day where we don't see the clinic being open, for example, Good Friday. You now can click on one of the segments and type in the reason why the clinic won't be open. And either make an adjustment to the times here, or if you click OK, you can now drag this cell down to when the clinic is closed. And now Good Friday will be blocked out from accepting appointments. And let's do Easter Monday as well. Click on the first day. And drag the cell down to noon. So we have now set 2 days where we're blocking out people from booking appointments at this clinic. And do that for any other days or hours that the clinic will be closed during normal operating periods. So at this point, we have now created the clinic, set the start and end date for the year, set the weekly schedule, and defined specific times on that weekly schedule when the clinic will be closed. The next step is for this coordinator to create additional users for their clinics, and those users can have any one or all of 4 roles, being coordinator or bookings, tax preparer, and analyst. So now we'll go back up to the admin, click on users. You'll now see the users that are in the system are all listed here, and any of these users can be edited where appropriate. And to add a new user, simply click Add New. Put in their username, email address. Now this email the system will use to send them a notice that they've been created as a user. And that email will contain a link where they will be able to log in and set their new password for accessing the system. Under the groups or roles, you can now select which roles are appropriate for this particular user. For a small clinic, you may have the same people that are doing the tax preparing also doing bookings. So you could select one or more. And you can now also select which clinics they will be working at. So let's say we want them doing work at both the Hunt Club and Canada West. And you can also set which languages they are competent in. And that will be used to display for the persons doing the bookings so they can try to match up the appropriate tax returner with the client who's having their tax return prepared and use the appropriate language. And if they're a volunteer, you can set this box here. It technically doesn't do anything in the application. It can just be used as in the report to distinguish staff from volunteers. So once I hit submit, this user will receive an email within about 5 minutes. And from that point, they can now log on and have access to the application that is set for tax preparers and also for bookings, since both of those two roles have been set for this person. So we've now created a user, and you can do that for all the users that will be taking part in using this application for your clinics. At any time, you can go in and edit a user. For example, we have Zed Booker here, and he presently is set up to take bookings, but you may also want to set him as a tax preparer because he's moving into that role as well. Adjust the clinics. So if Zed decides after a tax year he does not want to participate the following year, you simply uncheck the active switch. He can no longer log into the application, and he also will not appear in other lists, so no one mistakenly assigns clients for him to do tax returns. So that's the ability to edit a user. Let's now go to the next function, and that is to be able to view client appointments. So I'm now going to click on the appointments and then calendar. And for this particular coordinator, they have 4 clinics that they coordinate for. And you can see here that all the appointments that have been booked are listed, and you can see the status of the appointment, and you can see the name of the client that the appointment is for, and also the name of the tax returner that the appointment has been booked with. So that's Hunt Club, and you can now click along any of the different clinics that this coordinator is part of, and that coordinator can scroll through the calendar and see all the appointments for any particular week. The coordinator can also view and edit the tax returner's schedule. So if we go into appointments, schedule tax preparer, you can see that this screen lists all the users that have a tax preparer role at the clinics that this coordinator is responsible for. At this point, there's a couple of options. One is they could click on the button in the top right to view all the volunteer hours. And as they scroll through each clinic, they can see who has been set up to volunteer on each day. And changing clinics, they now see the volunteers for that clinic. And these are the volunteers that are doing the tax returns and submitting those. Going back to the list of users, they may want to adjust the working times for a tax preparer. Now the volunteers themselves can do that. So Jane Volunteer, for example, since she's a tax preparer, she will be able to set her own volunteer schedule, or the coordinator can do that as well. So when this schedule comes up, the coordinator can scroll through the calendar and see when Jane is presently volunteering. And if Jane for some reason cannot volunteer on Monday, March the 11th now, you can simply click the red X and that will delete that volunteer time. Or likewise, if Jane had not set this initially and she now has the ability to volunteer on the 11th, click the one segment, and I like just dragging the segment down to when Jane will end her volunteer time for that day. So you can make the adjustments for all your volunteers, or the tax preparers can do this as well, and that will be in a separate video. So that's covering the tax returner schedule. Let's now show you how the coordinator can view the appointments list report. So scrolling back to the top, clicking on appointments list. So rather than the appointment schedule, which is in a calendar view, this lists all the appointments that are in the system and simply counting how many appointments have been set up that are at status new appointment, how many of the appointments have been set that the reminder has been completed, how many appointments had been set to complete, and this is set to complete when the tax returner has indicated that the submission has been made in U-File or Profile, and also shows how many appointments have been canceled. And if you hover over, you can see which clinic that is associated with, and it also shows the count after the clinic name, and the clinic coloring coding is at the top. The actual details of each record is listed below, showing the status, who the client that appointment was with, the clinic, etc. You can sort by any of the columns simply by clicking the column header. If you click once, it'll sort it ascending or descending, and if you click it a second time, it will reverse that sort. On the side panel to the left, you can also filter. So if you want to only see all the new appointments, you see there's presently 10 new appointments in the list. If I check that box, it will now only show the new appointments and give you an update to the bar graph at the top. And if I want to go back to my initial list, I can click on Clear All. As well, you can do a search on this screen. So if I know there was an appointment with someone called Roger, the system will search all the records and try to find that matching word or date, whatever's keyed in here. So you can use the different options here in the side panel for filtering your list. If you want to see maybe all the appointments that were set with JVolunteer, you simply check the appropriate box. Clinic may be an option. Another option, if you are having a meeting with some of the individuals at one specific clinic, you could simply open that up and only show appointments for that one clinic and sort accordingly. So that's viewing the appointments list report, and the last thing we'll cover is viewing the returns submitted. So back to the application, click on Returns List, and now we're getting a list of all the returns submitted, reported in the system that the tax returners entered. And again, similar kind of functionality here on the left to filter to maybe one specific clinic if desired, or submitted by one or more certain individuals if you only want to show those. And Clear All will bring back the full list. And if you want to sort by any one of the columns, you can do that here as well. And the charts will show the count based on the clinics that this coordinator has responsibility for. So that covers this session and some of the functions that coordinators have within the 4TaxClinics application.